This is Secret America.
Welcome, everybody. I am Jack Danger along with Jay Gatling, and we have a very special guest for you today. He is one of the most talked about figures in modern medicine. He helped pioneer Myrna technology, then became one of its most outspoken critics when it was weaponized for COVID. He has been praised, censored, attacked, and followed by millions trying to understand what's really going on behind the scenes. This is going to be a conversation you don't want to miss. We have Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Malone, coming in right now. How you doing, sir? Thank you for being here.
Pretty good. Thanks for having me. Let's get going.
Let's go.
Oh, yeah. No, we really appreciate it. So, obviously, when people hear, that you're coming on the show, a lot of them think about the whole COVID thing and everything that was going on there. But so I want to ask you, and this is just, my first straight up question. What was the biggest lie? And this is just interesting to me. What was the biggest lie that was told to the American public during the pandemic?
Oh, that's a hard call because there's so many of them. And we wrote a whole book, The Lies My Government Told Me, cataloging many of those. The origin of the virus clearly was a major lie, and it was very actively promoted, and any alternative narratives were suppressed. The suppression of early treatment, the thesis that none of these repurposed drugs worked, that was a major lie. The safe and effective narrative associated with the vaccines was a major lie.
That was massive.
That if you took the vaccine, you would be immune from risk of disease and death from COVID. That was another major lie. We can kind of just keep rolling. One of the biggest, though, that was not really recognized was that the financials of what transpired resulted in the greatest upward transfer of wealth in modern history. That it was necessary to do this. The closing of our schools, mask wearing, 6-foot distancing, it just goes on and on and on.
Well, a lot of people don't know about the financial aspect of this. Can you talk about that? How these people ended up getting rich off of this?
Well, there was basically it appears, and this isn't my core expertise, but the appearance is that there was a programmatic thrust from the White House, among other places, to, in theory, mitigate the risk of closing down the economy by pumping capital into the economy through a variety of different mechanisms, subsidies, etc. And what that ended up doing was generating massive inflation, of course. That's totally understandable. And the action of closing down these particularly small businesses resulted in transfer of business activity and wealth to larger businesses and by extension into the stock market. And in closing down small businesses and the effects of the lockdowns, you ended up with a number of huge winners like Amazon that had business models, and there are many others that had
Walmart,
that allowed people to stay at home and not need to go out and go shopping and those kinds of things. And we saw explosion of social media. We saw explosion of the use of various online platforms for collaboration. That all generated huge revenue. So and then there's some things that happen with banking and investment that are not clear to me, but resulted in major capital flux into the wealthier away from, the people. If you're going to see that kind of money flow, it's got to go from somewhere to somewhere else.
Exactly.
And what it seems to have done is gone from the middle class. The middle class really got hollowed out during this, with the upper crust and investment funds, et cetera, gaining huge increases in net worth and capitalization.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, along psychologically, you wrote about this. What was the biggest psychological operation you saw used on the American citizenry during the pandemic?
Well, that's another one and remember, it wasn't just the U.S. This was really global across the West. Within the White House, there was, to be honest, it goes back into the Trump administration, back to 2020, but it really accelerated under Biden. This process of forcing social media to participate and facilitate government propaganda, and to shut down any messaging that was contrary to that was actively promoted as the accepted narrative by the government. And that came in a lot of different channels, but the Twitter files and the Facebook disclosures, et cetera, all really clearly document that. But that, in parallel, there was the deployment of a variety of different methods for messaging and message management, information management. So you had a promotion of narratives across corporate media. A lot of that was sponsored by the pharmaceutical industry. You had government sponsored and really aggressively promoted censorship. You had messaging that was promoted through government funding, through the CDC and others, billions of dollars to promote this, for instance, the safe and effective narrative, and other narratives that were tested in literally in clinical trials. The messaging about your social obligations to protect others by accepting the vaccine products, the messaging around your risk, the risk to children, the risk to elders, that if you didn't get vaccinated, then you were placing the elders at risk. It could be responsible for that.
They called you grandmother killer, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of promoted narratives coupled with active censorship of any alternative. And then within the underpinning scientific community, to justify these arbitrary and capricious decisions that were being made, you had a weaponized and promoted structure to silence any dissent from scientists or any alternative explanations, hypotheses. The Wuhan lab leak thesis, which is now widely accepted and promoted on the White House website, that was actively suppressed. There was manuscripts published in high-profile journals that were just flat out fraudulent. The trashing of hydroxychloroquine, the trashing of ivermectin, the narratives promoting the perhaps one of the biggest underpinning false narratives was that this virus was highly lethal, and that was based on modeling. The narrative that the vaccines have saved millions and millions of lives globally, that was used to justify the Nobel Prize, that was also a fake, contrived narrative based on faulty modeling.
Absolutely.
You just go on and on.
I want to so real quick before we keep going, I want to show people know that you are the crusader against COVID and the vaccine and what happened, but I want to show people why this is so important. So I'm going to show people this right here. First of all, okay, so for people that don't know, what Myrna is, DNA is like the master blueprint. Okay, it's inside the cell. It's it's in the nucleus. It's the nucleus. It never leaves the nucleus. Okay, so Myrna is like a temporary set of instructions. Okay, the cells read it and they build proteins. But there was a big problem with this. In the 1980s, Dr. Malone helped show Myrna can enter cells. But the problem at first was that they couldn't get into cells. They were blocked. Every time they would try to inject Myrna into these cells, it would be blocked. So what did Dr. Malone do? He found out that you could wrap them in tiny fat bubbles called liposomes. You can wrap them in tiny fat bubbles and slip them inside, kind of sneak them inside. It's like putting them in a disguise and then sneaking them inside the cell. And then they were able to deliver those specific set of instructions to the DNA. And it was Dr. Malone that discovered that. See, the breakthrough was not Myrna. That was not the breakthrough. The breakthrough was the delivery system. Once they wrapped it in lipids, the cells let it in. That is why this is so important. That is why he talks about it. And that is the breakthrough. Dr. Malone is the one that discovered that. Myrna means nothing if you can't get it inside the cell. Dr. Malone figured out how to get it inside the cell by putting it in a disguise, right? Wrapping it in the tiny fat bubble and sneaking it inside. Dr. Malone, that was brilliant, I must say. How'd you come up with that?
Well, your narrative there is I'm going to have to nitpick it just a tiny bit.
Go ahead.
They're not liposomes; they're self-assembling particles.
Oh, okay,
and,
gotcha.
And,
thank you for that clarification.
And it's mRNA, not Myrna, messenger RNA. It's an acronym, but
Gotcha.
The way that it's a long story how this came about. The structure of the RNA was important to make this work. The ability to manufacture it in scale and purify it was also important to make it work. The lipid nanoparticle formulation, the story with that was that a group of people at Syntex had been working on the use of positively charged fats to change the surface charge of cell membranes. Mm-hmm. And a student that was rotating in the lab who had previously worked with delivering DNA into cells said, well, this stuff is positive, DNA is negative. What happens if we mix it? And that was a key breakthrough that allowed DNA to get in. That team at Syntex was not able to make that work with messenger RNA. And I had done all the pre-work to develop the manufacturing and structure, et cetera, the messenger RNA genetically. Mm-hmm. And so I was given a tip-off that this particular technology involving positively charged fats might work for RNA. And so I contacted the folks at Syntex. They couldn't get it to work. I got some samples from them, and the rest is history. So it's a self-assembling particle. It's kind of like iron filings. Mm-hmm. And a battery is one metaphor, a magnetic field, but it's that the fats are positive, basically. Mm-hmm. The mRNA or DNA is negatively
charged, yeah.
And they just associate with each other, form a complex, and then that by choosing other fats that you add into the mixture, mm-hmm. When those things, because cells are also generally net negative on their surface. Mm-hmm. So you formulate this so it has a net positive charge that drives it towards associating with the cell surface. And then having the other fats in there that fuse with cell membranes is mm-hmm. what allows the whole thing to kind of become one with the cell membrane and get across. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that completely makes sense. And it's a great discovery, I think, because without it, Myrna doesn't really work. You can't get it in there. And people don't realize that the importance of Myrna is to deliver those instructions, but also, excuse me, I'm so used to saying Myrna, mRNA. It delivers the instructions so that way it can build the proteins, like the spike protein that it did.
So this is one of the key points that I made early on and was attacked by the, high school level fact checkers, mm-hmm. was that those have all kind of gone away. You notice, mm-hmm. the key idea here comes out of gene therapy. I was working in a gene therapy lab developing this as a gene therapy technology. And I realized that there was fundamental problems with gene therapy involving the immune response to the foreign genes and their proteins. And that, number one, you could use RNA for transient gene therapy. And number two, of all the applications in the world, the easiest one to make work would be to use it to produce an immune response or make it a vaccine. So my position was that, yes, this is a gene therapy being used for vaccination. That was another one of those things that I was called a liar for saying. But
they're going to challenge you on expertise, right?
Okay. Well, there's reasons for it, because if it was a gene therapy, if they would accept that it was a gene therapy, then they would have to apply the regulatory rules for gene therapy.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got you.
There's always a reason. There's always a reason.
Yeah, so they couldn't allow that, because if that was the case, that it was going to take longer, and it would mean that they hadn't done their job at the FDA, which they didn't.
No way.
So we're left with these questions like shedding. For a standard gene therapy, shedding tests are required. So by saying that, no, this is just a vaccine, it's just like any other vaccine, and it falls under the vaccine regulations. Don't pay attention to those gene therapy regulations. They don't apply because this is not a gene therapy. That's part of the sleight of hand that Peter Marks did at the FDA.
Exactly. Jay, you got something?
Yeah. Well, with your original vision for mRNA, did it kind of go the way you thought it would go? Did it end up the way you wanted it to go in some ways? Or now, when it comes to, say, cancer vaccinations, how do you see this as something that's risky, that you think it's something that could work? Where are we on something like that? Because you're starting to hear about things with cancer vaccinations and along those lines. So where are we with that?
So cancer vaccination is a really good place to start to illustrate some core ideas here. Any pharmaceutical has risks and benefits. There's no perfect drug. You can famously made the case that even water is toxic at excess doses. Right. So
yeah,
all drugs have risks and benefits, and they need to be viewed in the context of how they're going to be used, what the application is. So to talk about vaccines in general, in the case of yellow fever or Ebola, people will line up around the block to get a very toxic vaccine. The yellow fever vaccine is a live attenuated yellow fever virus, and if you take excess number of doses, you can die from yellow fever. The Ebola vaccine is a recombinant vesicular stomatitis virus, and it causes a really nasty inflammatory response. Your joints hurt, your muscles hurt. Some people feel like they want to go crawl under a hole and die. But in the face of Ebola or a yellow fever outbreak, people will line up around the block to get this, because the threat, which is to say the indication, is so severe that they're willingly tolerate a lot of adverse events associated with the product. So in the case of cancer, you have somebody, ostensibly with a life-threatening disease, and they may have a relatively modest projected remaining lifespan. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 2 years. And so something that might cause problems like myocarditis or longer-term immunologic problems, if you're facing imminent death, that may seem like a good bargain if there's any evidence that it works.
Right.
If in the case of prophylactic vaccines, let's say influenza or SARS-CoV-2, which turns out to not be so deadly after all, taking a product that has a side effect like myocarditis,
Mm-hmm.
in the blood clotting disorders, et cetera, that are associated with these products, at some rate, even though it may be rare. If you're a 16-year-old boy, the probability that you're going to get hospitalized or die from infection with SARS-CoV-2 is pretty close to zero.
Mm-hmm.
And the probability that you'll get myocarditis from taking the product is significantly greater than zero, but it's not huge. But then if you do the risk-benefit ratio, suddenly taking a product that might cause you a major heart damage that might last for the rest of your life and might eventually kill you versus risking getting infected with an upper respiratory virus that isn't going to kill you and unlikely to put you in the hospital, that's a poor bargain.
That's exactly what they did during COVID. That is exactly what they did for COVID.
So that's and then, as if that isn't bad enough, mandating that this 16-year-old has to do this in order to participate in society, go to school, eat in restaurants, et cetera, that's just not acceptable. And in anybody's rational book of bioethics, that, I assert that any mandated medical procedure should be illegal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
It defied common sense. It just defied common sense.
And that's why there was a big reason for it, because they pushed it hard.
Yeah. So, and with all the propaganda and the censorship.
Exactly.
So that's, I'm glad we brought this up. So with cancer vaccines, the opportunity, and let's see that it, whether it matures over the next decade. Remember that this tech was developed in 1989, really 1987 through 1992, and was reduced to practice for vaccination in the early 1990s. Carrico and Weissman didn't come by for another decade. So the tech has been around a long time. All these patents on that tech behind me have all expired, long expired. And sorry, detractors, but no, I did not get rich. I got paid one Susan B. Anthony dollar because I was working for a company because I needed to have a salary so my wife could finish her undergraduate degree at UC San Diego.
Wow.
So that's just the way things go. But all of those patents expired because the company that owned them, that I had been working for, couldn't make RNA vaccines work. They couldn't even make RNA, really. So all these claims that my old supervisor is the one that was responsible for this, and I wasn't. That's all. It doesn't pass the sniff test because after I left, they stopped working on it.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
Visualize it. But what they did do was they used those patents as a weapon to keep anybody else from working on it, including sending me threatening letters as an academic that I couldn't work on the things that I worked on when I was working for them. So that's just how it goes. And then the patents expired. DARPA launched a big program because they thought that this technology could enable a rapid response gene to vaccine capability, which is something that the government would like to have.
I'm sure.
For a variety of reasons, whether it's vaccinating special forces or allowing a rapid countermeasure, et cetera. So that's kind of booted it up. And Moderna was a big recipient of that money. Moderna decided that cancer vaccines was the way to go. And that business model failed.
Well,
Moderna would have been bankrupt if COVID hadn't come along.
Yeah, isn't that lucky for them? I want to ask you something though, because on the topic of cancer vaccines, there was a CIA document that recently came to light. It actually was declassified about 10 years ago, but it recently came to light. And what it did was it translated a Soviet paper that talked about how tumors react the same way. They have the same kind of existence as parasites. You know, they have the same kind of
Yeah, that was really overplayed on social media.
So do you think that either like a combination, and this is just, I just want to get your opinion on this, you being, you know, one of the top people in your field, do you think that, because they said that in that paper, and this was a long time ago, obviously 1951, they said that the things that they used were kind of like anti-parasitic medications, and the tumor, which said it was effective on the tumor. So nowadays, I wanted to ask you, do you think people that take like ivermectin, a combination, high doses of ivermectin, fenben, and then mebendazole, or however you say that name, do you think that can actually help people with cancer? Because there are lots of cases where people say they've taken it, but I honestly don't know, but that's what they say. So what do you think about that?
So ivermectin is an interesting molecule. It's a natural product, by the way.
Yes, it is. Won the Nobel Prize.
And it seems to have a variety of different activities. And one of those activities seems to be involved in modulating immune responses, a pro-inflammatory activity. And this was one of the things that the FDA objected to, is they believed that the only drugs that could be useful for SARS-CoV-2 had to be direct-acting antivirals. And you know, that's been proven wrong many times, but they were really dug in on that idea, which is why they ridiculed ivermectin and also hydroxychloroquine. So remember, cancer is not one thing. There are many different types of mutations and malignancies that respond to different agents.
Yes.
There's a lot of report in the ivermectin and the bendazole and other combinations. That emerging body of experience, let's call it. A lot of them are case studies or case series.
Yes.
Is actively exploring how these combinations can be used for different types of tumors. And it's often used in the context of somebody that is already failed existing therapies, which is a major problem in cancer research, because often established chemotherapies severely damage your immune system. Right. And cancer is fundamentally a disease of a failure of your immune system.
Yeah, and a lot of these case studies were done on stage 4. You know, stage 4, and even Johns Hopkins. This just came to light. Johns Hopkins has a patent on I don't know how to say it, mebendazole polymorph, and apparently that is what they are using to try to develop another treatment for cancer or tumors.
So can these combinations have activity? Yes.
Okay.
Are they as widely useful as some people are suggesting? That would be amazing if that was the case. Time will tell. The probability is no. But that doesn't mean that it should be tried, particularly for salvage patients, which is what you're talking about. And it's relatively benign, these protocols. There's also a number of more herbal-based and other natural remedy products that may have utility. So I don't discount any of this. To do that would be to shut the door on potential new additions to the portfolio of treatments.
That's very admirable. Most doctors would discount. I mean, they would just offhand say.
That's so. Let's not to be defending my profession.
No. I understand. I mean, not all of them. I don't mean all doctors would do that, but I've seen a lot of them.
But let me get the point out. Most that's the reason why they have MD, PhD programs. Is most docs are trained to assimilate information from authority figures
Mm-hmm.
and then apply that information. They're not really taught to think. They're not taught to be scientists. They are kind of taught to be very good at learning accepted practice and then implementing it. And so a couple of things come out of that. They're often trained by people who are strong authority figures. And so when they get finished with training, they often behave as strong authority figures.
Mm-hmm.
No surprise. It's like the father that beats his child, and then the child grows up and beats their child. It's just the way things are.
The cycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
So
true.
that you get this kind of overbearing arrogance on the part of a lot of docs that makes it very difficult for them to admit that they have gaps in their knowledge, that we really don't know that much about human biology. That this is just to maybe close on this.
Sure.
One of the reasons why I used to collect old medical texts is because it taught humility. You can go back and read the old literature on treating tuberculosis, for example, and it seems absolutely absurd now in retrospect. Or here's a fun one. You ever hear the expression, "You're blowing smoke up my ass"?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there was actually a tool. You can still find them online or references that was a kind of a funnel, a cone. It would be inserted into the rectum of a patient, often a drowning patient. And you would blow tobacco smoke into that tube to get at the rectal mucosa, and because that would be therapeutic. And going back further, the bleeding, the leeches, and
I did not know that.
These sayings, they always come from somewhere.
Yeah, that's actually,
right.
it's good to learn that right
that's
there.
where that one comes from. Is there actually was a device for blowing smoke up your ass?
Wow. That's good. I never knew that. That's good. Now, tell me, you said they did that to drowning patients?
Yeah, it was considered to be one of the ways to treat somebody that had drowned or suffered.
Oh, okay. Is it because it like absorbs into their bloodstream or something? Or
yeah, that's the thesis is,
Gotcha.
and it does. That's why you use suppositories.
Yep, exactly.
Man.
That's good though. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that is something else.
But my point is, in the history of hand washing, the guy that came up with the bizarre idea that physicians should wash their hands after they deliver or do an autopsy before they go back and treat a patient or do surgery, that was rejected. The guy that came up with that was driven out of medicine. He was ridiculed. He ended up committing suicide.
Jesus.
But how could you even imagine going in to have a medical procedure and not having the doc wash his hands and put on a pair of rubber gloves?
You
That's
never think it
incredible.
would even possible to ever have been a possibility even back then.
It would be malpractice.
Yeah,
They were claiming it was malpractice if docs were in their office and meeting patients without putting paper face masks on.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, but but back then it was malpractice if you did wash your hands.
Yeah.
Between
Well, I think what it really is that when you have this kind of a hierarchical authoritarian structure, somebody comes in with new ideas, that is profoundly threatening to the existing hierarchy.
Exactly.
And they will reject it. And that's what happened during COVID with all these docs like Pierre Corey suggesting the use of steroids. But it turns out that is an improvement in the treatment because here's what's often overlooked. COVID as a disease has two phases. The first phase is the viral infection. It is the response and the damage caused by the virus actually replicating in your body. Then you go through that, and you may feel like you have the flu because functionally you're triggering your interferons and the same kind of things that influenza infection triggers when you get a flu infection. And then you have all of this viral debris and there's more to it than that, because the spike protein binds to ACE2, and that has biological, blah blah blah. But at the fundamental level, there's this first wave of viremia, and then a little bit of a spacer often, and then the second phase is what kills you.
Mm-hmm.
And the second phase is your body's inflammatory response, largely to the viral debris left over from the first phase.
Wow.
And so that's why anti-inflammatory strategies save lives.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole bunch of different types of anti-inflammatory strategies. So there's a lot of different protocols for how to save people in that second phase. And the people that die in that second phase are people that have what's known as inflammatory set point elevations,
Mm-hmm.
obese people, diabetics, many different conditions, chronic infections, etc., lifestyle things.
Is that
And
why the comorbidities was such an issue during COVID?
Precisely. So you have those pro-inflammatory comorbidities. So
Mhm.
your inflammatory set point is elevated. Then you get this inflammatory insult on top of it, and it tips you over to where suddenly your body is responding to this thing in a way that ends up killing you. And then, to make matters worse, they put you on a ventilator. They use ventilation protocols that are inappropriate.
And they were
And feed you
incentivized. They were
drugs.
incentivized to do so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they feed you drugs like remdesivir that ends up destroying your kidneys and killing you.
Absolutely.
That's insane.
So
I want to ask you.
it's important to understand that about COVID.
Yeah.
And any doc that was saying, remember Pierre Corey was the one that kind of broke the news in Senate testimony. He said that using dexamethasone could really improve outcomes,
Mhm.
and he was vilified for it.
Mhm.
And then without too much of a delay, suddenly it was the standard of care, and everybody had to use dexamethasone.
Is that not incredible? That's incredible. I want to ask you something about the vaccine itself. Have
Go.
you? I mean, I'm sure you have. Those big white fibrous clots that they were pulling out of people's veins and out of hearts that would suddenly. I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the videos.
It's
People
not
suddenly.
it's not just the squid clots.
Yeah. I mean,
But
those came from the vaccine.
Those are the macro ones that you can
Mhm.
see.
Yeah.
But there's also microcoagulopathy, so very small clots which block small blood vessels, which is a real problem because it's the small vessels, the capillary beds, where the gas exchange happens and where basically the food for your cells comes through across your vascular wall. And so these little microclots cause just as much trouble as those big macro ones that are pulled out in cadavers.
Well, how do the vaccines make those? I mean, how does it make those white big
So
fibrous
spike
clots?
protein seems to be interfering with the coagulation cascade,
Oh.
which is very dynamically regulated.
Mhm.
And it results, the vector sum of all that results in a highly cross-linked clot that, so it's kind of biochemically cross-linked,
Mhm.
which blood clots do anyhow, fibrin does, but it's a question of to what extent, because we have other proteases in our body circulating that your blood clotting is a very active process, and it's kind of always ongoing to some extent.
Mhm.
So if you lose your ability to clot, like say you take too much aspirin or warfarin or whatever,
Mhm.
you'll bleed out. And that's not good. And if you tip the scales too much the other way, that you're promoting these blood clots, and then furthermore, the thing that's triggering that is influencing how cross-linked those clots get, then the enzymes that are supposed to come in and break those clots up when they're no longer needed can't work.
Mhm.
And so the clots just propagate and get big, and that's how you end up with squids in your body.
Some of those were massive. I mean, you saw, really big, something I've never seen before.
Yeah. So, and it may have been worse with the adenovirus vectors because maybe, as opposed to the mRNA, the adenovirus vectored vaccines produced a lot more spike for a short period of time, whereas the RNA is a lower level but a more prolonged level.
Gotcha.
Before we move on to what's going on recently, I just have one question. If a parent asks you today whether their child should get an mRNA vaccine, what would you say?
For COVID, the answer is unequivocal. The risk benefit is upside down, and it should be no.
Okay.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And which is why on the ACIP, which may or may not exist at the moment,
Mhm.
that's another news item that I'm getting a lot of press pressure about. But
We were actually going to ask you about that as well, unless you don't want to talk about it. It's
well,
up
you
to
should. I've probably done 8 interviews yesterday and 5 more today, and 2 podcasts about
Yeah,
that.
let's get to that for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, definitely.
But the where was I going with this? So at ACIP, what we did was because the secretary did not want to take anyone's vaccines away,
Mhm.
we changed the recommendation status from recommended for young people
Mhm.
to a category that allows for shared decision making between the patient or the guardian and the physician.
That's the right
So
way to
that
do it, I think.
well, what it is basically saying no more mandates,
There, that's
and
perfect.
that they're still going to be available
Mhm.
if you have a child that has a morbid condition like cancer or cystic fibrosis or morbid obesity or diabetes
Mhm.
that does put them at higher risk. Then you can have a discussion with your physician about whether this is right for you, but you're no longer going to get kind of the knee jerk, well, little Tommy, time for your mRNA jab, which is
Mhm.
what the American Academy of Pediatrics has been promoting.
So what about the judge blocking this whole schedule? The whole, I mean, it seems like the judge blocked everything. Do you think it's going to be able to go through? I mean, it's probably going to go to the Supreme Court, would you imagine?
Mm. So there's been a lot of churn about that.
Mhm.
And Bobby called me this afternoon to talk about it.
Very cool.
Secretary Kennedy, who's a friend.
That's cool.
So here's the problem, is that reading between the lines of what I've been told, the legal analysis is that there's actually some merit to the position that things weren't done right and proper in terms
Really?
of appointing ACIP members.
That was the FACA, FACA.
Yeah, the ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, for which I, up until recently, was the vice chairperson,
Mhm.
and it was supposed to be having meetings yesterday, the day before. So, Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices for the CDC is a federal, chartered as a federal, under the Federal Advisory Committee Act, or FACA, which is a congressional bill that makes it so that the federal government can obtain outside advice that is not, that is totally independent of the bureaucracy
Mhm.
or lobbyists or corporate interests. Those are the rules with FACA. That's why the conflict of interest is so important.
Yeah.
These are people that, and by the way, they don't pay us.
Oh,
So
wow.
those 17 poor souls, including myself, we're doing all this uncompensated, with the exception of a honorarium for the days that we were actually in Atlanta.
Mhm.
I think that was $350 a day. So most of these people make, north of 350 an hour.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they were doing it as service to their country. That's why
Exactly.
the secretary asked me to do it.
Right.
And
So the judge just ruled that this whole thing was they were just appointed incorrectly. Is that what?
Well,
is
they
that
were
what
they were
threw out?
appointed incorrectly, and that none of us were qualified, essentially. Which
That- That's the biggest thing right there.
That
That's
doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
I mean-
well. So what happened? You know, to be brutally honest,
Yeah.
this lawsuit was concocted by a law firm, a liberal law firm,
Mm-hmm.
looking to find some way to poke Secretary Kennedy and the president in the nose, and used the American Academy of Pediatrics as the venue for standing to file this. It was a hastily prepared, poor quality suit, but it appears to have hit the mark with this very activist left-wing judge in Boston who is close buddies with Senators Schumer and Warren.
Wonderful.
And barely got appointed, kind of at a midnight appointment as the prior administration was heading out the door.
Yeah, right at the end, right?
So he's been repeatedly overturned. He's actually been reprimanded by the Supreme Court, I think, twice.
Oh,
which
wow.
is extremely unusual.
Well,
He's only been in office a couple of years, maybe a year even.
And he's already been reprimanded twice by the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
For disregarding their guidance. In this, and he just the day before, well, the morning of this decision, he had just been overturned on another case involving immigration.
Gee, and there's not
Shocking.
like a limit. There should be like a limit of how many times you're overturned.
There is the only way to get these federal judges out is through impeachment, which is really
very
tough.
difficult.
Rare.
So
there should be like a certain amount of cases. If you're overturned like 10 times.
So in theory, it works by embarrassment. It means that he won't get promoted to a higher bench. Blah blah blah. But meantime, he's making trouble. So, so the decision, essentially, his position was that we weren't qualified. Well, to unpack that, the only documents he really had to make that determination, because the judge doesn't go out and do diligence himself, right? You don't have investigative, you don't have, Judge Judy, investigative attorney, going out and doing dragnet.
You probably would have been better off.
They probably just do Wikipedia or something. That's probably all they do.
They don't do any of that. They rely on the plaintiff and the defendant and their attorneys to present the information that the judge then makes a ruling over.
So they can just present whatever information they want.
What happened here was that the attorneys for the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is heavily subsidized by, basically, there isn't a pharmaceutical company making vaccines that doesn't make major payments to the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Gotcha.
So they took the position that we were unqualified. In my case, they didn't cite my CV. They cited a New York Times hit piece written 5 years ago, something like that, during the height of COVID.
Wow.
As evidence that I had no qualifications. And it was similarly superficial and defamatory for all the others. And then on the government side, because they're supposed to respond to this, and you would think they would ask all of us for our CVs and get good information. No, what the Justice Department did a really shoddy job in defending.
They're known for that.
I guess because they thought that the case had no merit and they didn't need to assign a good lawyer to do this. And so they did a crummy job, and they didn't ask any of us for our backgrounds or qualifications. What they did was they cited the CDC website, which has like 3-sentence summaries of each of us.
Wow.
And so the judge concluded from that we weren't qualified. because he has this stuff from AAP, and then he has this, look at the website thing, and he has to make a determination on that. So in a way, I don't, I wish the judge hadn't done this, but I wish more that the Justice Department had done their job.
They could just look at listen, we're just looking at the picture of Dr. Malone on the screen here.
Yeah.
Judging by what's behind him, he's qualified. Maybe they should have just sent a picture of your screen where you do.
That's all they had to do. Your background, right?
Look at all the diplomas. You could paper the wall with them. I think he's qualified. I mean, what a joke.
So I've got pushing now on 40 years of a detailed vaccine experience at Dynport Vaccine Company, which had the Prime Systems contract for all biodefense vaccines.
Wait, the judge didn't know who you were? You're a well-known person.
Yeah, so that's the way things go. Is it's not fair, and then you die. But get over it.
That's true.
And so, getting back to the position of the government, this is I'm coming back from doing this podcast with Aaron Siri yesterday morning, flying back from Arizona and to DC, and online, doing my work, preparing another Substack, and my wife sends me a text message that the chairman of the ACIP has written an email saying that he wants me to call him as soon as I land, or as soon as I can. So I land at 4:00 in Reagan Airport, call Kirk up. What's going on? He tells me these things. He says, they've decided to dissolve the ACIP. You're set free. You no longer have any FACA obligations, because once you're in that, not only do you not get paid, and you get subjected to all kinds of harassment and grief, but you are constrained in what you can say, so you can't even defend yourself. That's just the deal. I like to say it's the worst of all because you're working for the government and you're not getting paid.
Sounds like a dream job. Hey,
and
sign
you
me
can't
up.
defend yourself.
Sign me up. How do I get involved?
Yeah, right. I suspect that recruitment for the ACIP going forward might be a little more tough.
Yeah,
but,
I could imagine
after this. But in any case, so Kirk says this to me. They're going to dissolve it. You're set free. And I ask him, what about the defamation we've received? And he says, well, the government can't do anything about that. They're apparently not going to appeal the decision.
Really?
And so I report that on Twitter immediately, and then the shit starts flying.
That's where the post-controversy came from.
Then the news media starts calling up the people in the government going, what's going on? And the guy at the government level is Andrew Nixon. He's like caught flat-footed. He didn't know this. Nobody told him. And he calls up Jay Bhattacharya, who's the one that told Kirk Milhound to say this to all of us. And Jay says, well, it's not exactly what I said. Because at this point, the feces are starting to fly. And so Jay's trying to walk it back. Andrew Nixon goes on this campaign with all the media, slamming me, basically saying I was a liar, that this isn't true. And so then I have to explain myself and document what actually was said. And Kirk has to be interviewed. And there's a piece where Kirk says, this is what I said to Malone. And meanwhile, you've got the press person for the CDC, Andrew Nixon, saying, no, he didn't.
This sounds like a perfect government-run operation.
Yes,
this sounds
exactly like how they run
welcome to my world. So we get thrown into the bus, and I've been defending myself for the 24 hours after that. There's now, the Guardian has put out an article, Wall Street Journal smearing me. once again, so I get dragged through the mud again. Kurt gets dragged through the mud again. Hey, what's new? And
It's unbelievable because all you try to do is help people.
then I get this call from Bobby today, and Bobby says, "Well, we haven't actually made a decision yet, but the appeals process is so lengthy, and we've been looking at this, and we're sure we can win on the aspect of their misrepresenting your qualifications,
Right.
but it turns out that the guy who's responsible for checking the boxes and crossing the T's at CDC didn't do his job. And so there's actually merit.
That's
that
unbelievable.
In fact, we weren't properly appointed.
So you did all that and they're not going to take the recommendation. You did all that for nothing.
Thousands of hours right down the trash can.
That is unbelievable.
And you wonder why our government can never get good people to come in and give their time to help and try to do something. You wonder why. You hear something like this, and now there's serious implications. It's just, we're having fun with it a little bit, but what happens now to this schedule for the kids? I mean, we only have a couple minutes.
So that's part of the judge's complaint. Is the judge asserts, I think, on examination, it's really contrived. He cherry picks parts of sentences to assert that it was Congress's intent that there be no modifications to the vaccine recommendations without the ACIP. And by the way, the ACIP you have right now is illegitimate because these people aren't qualified and they weren't properly appointed. And so basically the government is locked up, can't do anything. The judge has said he's placed to stay in an injunction. And so they've analyzed this, and my understanding is that here's the situation. The First Circuit Court, which you'd have to appeal it to, is very, very liberal. So they could well lose. And then they'd have to appeal to the next level.
So it is a lengthy process then, very lengthy.
So meanwhile, the government is all locked up. It can't do anything.
That's right. There's no fun.
You've got this district judge basically telling the president what he can or can't do about vaccine policy.
Yeah. It's like the judges run our country now. But Dr. Malone, we've only got a couple minutes left. I want you to tell people where they can find you, what they should subscribe to.
Well, thanks. So I'm present on Twitter, Gab, Truth Social, at RW Malone MD. So that's easy to find. We publish a essay pretty much daily on various topics, current politics, health, wellness, homesteading. We got a homesteading book coming out now, is the next one. And of course, all things COVID and all this kind of stuff, vaccine policy, etc. So you can find that at malone.news. It's a Substack. And then, as your ticker says here, you can go on our website, which is the usual rwmalonemd.com. And a myriad of other people's podcasts. I may start my own at some point.
Well, you got to come back on our show.
We got to
need more time with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, we don't really have time right now, but I so badly wanted to ask you, actually, I'm just going to read the question. I know you don't have time to answer it, but it was something that was so important. I said, a lot of people believe chemtrails are real, and recent exposures seem to confirm that fact. So I just wanted to ask, if let's say that is the case, what do chemtrails do to the human body? I know we don't have time, but
it all depends on the material that they're using. And it's not just the human body, it's our soil, it's amphibians.
That's true.
It's the flora and fauna around us. And I think it's incredibly arrogant. But now we have the smoking gun because of the declassified CIA documents that in fact this has been going on.
Yep.
There you go.
That's what I was going to try to bring up to you, is the CIA document that was just recently declassified or shown out, talking about that they were poisoning the skies, basically. So yeah, that's incredible. We'll definitely have to have you back on so we can talk more about that, because there's so many. You're such a brilliant man that there's so many things we want to talk to you about, but an hour's just not long enough. We want to thank you for coming on the show, though. We really appreciate it. You surpassed our wildest dreams, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. I'm glad that I could meet or exceed your expectations.
Absolutely. You definitely exceeded our expectations. We really appreciate it. So yeah, if you want to stay on for just a second after the outro, then we'll talk to you for a second, then we can go, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you guys for watching so much. We really appreciate it. Be sure to watch us Monday. We have Roger Stone coming on the Monday show, 7 p.m. Eastern. So thank you guys for watching. For Jay Gatling, I am Jack Danger along with Dr. Robert Malone. Thank you for watching Secret America.
You've been listening to Secret America.